Okay, so now that you're in a position where you have your samples, because you've got your data values, you then created your samples on the choice that you had, most of us, or I know some of, I won't say most because that would be untrue, but some of us have worked out our frequency tables and then looked at creating the histograms. So the first thing that I would look at, I'm going to show you first, is if you've got your frequency table. So for this data, I worked through and found out that my samples went from anywhere from 0 all the way down to 40. So I created intervals of 5. Okay, so at intervals of 5, found the frequency for each, and the easiest way to find the frequency, so for example 0 to 5 in my junior sample, is to click on the first one, drag down and highlight until you get to the end of that interval. And down the bottom here, which you guys can't see, that says down the bottom there is a count of 25. So there's 25 that I've highlighted, so that's what my frequency is. Okay, it saves you actually counting one by one because you might miss one. It does that part for you. Now you would do that so on, so you go 6 to 10. Okay, my next one, 6 to 10, there's 7, and that would be there. Okay, is that making sense? The easiest way from here is to now draw my histogram, is to highlight that intervals and to highlight the frequencies. From here you can now create, so go to Insert, create a 2D column. The easiest way to make these histograms, now it's sort of the cheap way, is to create a column graph of that data, which would look like that. Problem with that is, why is that not a histogram? Okay, good. There's gaps between them. So what you do to make this a histogram is you'd click on the column, double click, and it will open up the options. Over here in your format data series, you come down to where the gap width is. Currently the gap width is 219% between each column. If I want them to be touching, I just make that gap width 0. So I drag it across and make that 0. It's now a histogram. Okay. If you want to be able to see the lines a little bit more clearly, you can click on the button here. Sorry, wrong one. That one. On the border. Now I want a solid line around each of the columns. If I do it a different color, we might be able to see it. So I might do it white. And you can just play around with the widths. Okay. So now you can sort of see where they're touching a little bit more clearly. From here, you can then got that information. Now, you'd want to be putting into your axes. So I've got my title, that's just a basic one. You'd be putting in the variable you're talking about as well. To add in here, I want to put in some axes titles. So you go to the plus, because it can add all the extra bits and pieces to support you in, because you've got to put in your axes title. In your axis title, down the bottom, should be whatever it is we're looking at. So I said hours of sleep. Over this one, frequency, spell it right, and then you have that filled in. Okay? And then it's a really clear, easy visual representation of your sample. You can see the distribution of the data. You can see where most of it sits. And then that would be what you do that for both. So then what you would do if you want to do the second column or the second data set is you have that one and that one. You do the same again. I need to check actually. Okay, so as I was saying, you'll have to highlight the two columns that you need, so the interval and then the frequencies for the other one. You do the same process, insert, create your 2D graph. It didn't work. We'll go back. Try again. And then you create the other one, go through that same process. Okay. You then have your two graphs. Now, some people like to then have a graph where they've got them both on there comparing each other. Now, you can have that as an additional one. Don't have that as your only one. So what that would look like is having all of them together. Same thing, insert 2D graph, it'll just graph them together, like next to each other, so you can have a bit more of a comparison about those intervals and where they sit and where more the higher ones are. So you can have that as an additional third one. It's not necessary, but you can also do it if that's what is going to support you in understanding and interpreting what's you're finding out. All right? So that's your creating the graphs of it. Next bit that we're going to look at is now the calculations. So things like the measures of center, the measures of spread, and working through that process. You'll also probably, once, not today, but next lesson, so Tuesday, we're going to be talking about look how we find outliers and how we find things like standard deviation. So I don't expect you to be working through that today. I'm not going to explain it. But things like mean, finding the minimum, Q1, Q3, median, and the maximum, and we can work on the range and interquartile range. We can do all of that on here on Excel, okay, so that you don't have to import all the lists into your calculator, go through that process and then import them over. You can do it all in here with the functions that we have on Excel that do the calculations, and then just use these tables within your assignment, okay? So for example, we'll work through these. So you might want to have them open so that you can even play around while I'm doing it, so that you know where you're going and how we do this. So if I click in this little cell here next to the mean, I'm going to find out the mean of my junior male sample. Now to do that, what I want to do is I want to go to where it says formulas up the top, and you want to insert a function. So formulas, insert a function, and it will give you this pop-up menu where you can go and pick. Now I want to find the mean, so up the top it says search for a function, type in mean, press go. Usually shows you what. So the mean is your average. We've talked about that before. So we're going to just type in average instead, and the very first one at the top will be average. So when you do, you press OK, and then it's going to ask you what numbers you want it to go between. Okay, so what cells do you want your mean to be between? At the moment, it's selected J2 and J15. My sample is here, so it's that one, which is E2. So if you want to go between 2 points, and then you do your double dot. So I can't remember what that's called. I should know that, but the one next to the L. So what it would look like is I'm going from J2 to whatever the bottom of my list is. The bottom of the list there, I come down, I click in that cell. E2 in this case. And then I want E51. So between E2 and E51. And then what it will do is it'll calculate my mean for me. Okay? Much quicker, much easier than putting your data in. So that would be your mean. So you're looking for the average. Now I'll probably write these up on the board after I've explained it, and you've also got this to watch as well. Find your minimum. Now if you've already got your data in order, so if you've gone here, put them in order, sort and filter, smallest to largest. It's really easy to find your minimum. My minimum is 0. Go down to my maximum is 40, because it was the bottom value, so my min and max really easy. The next one I'm going to find is my median. So I'll do that same process. I go to formulas, insert function. Median will probably come up in your list because it's a quite common used one. Have median, enter. Now you want it to go through those same points. So the ones that we used before for that list was E2, E51. You've got 50 data values. So if you type in E2, E51, press enter, it'll give you a median. Yes, it's giving you a middle point. So that was pretty simple also. The last two, when we're looking for, are the quartile 1. Click in here, insert the function. Should be probably 3rd or 4th down your list, or we say quartile. So you click on that one, press OK. The first thing it'll ask you is the array, so what's it between. So the same thing we've been using, E2 to E51. And the quartile, in this case, is 1. So I'm doing quartile 1, press enter, it'll give me quartile 1. If you don't put in 1, it won't give you the right spot. If I go to quartile 3 now, same process, quartile I've just used, so let me select that as the top one. Same thing, E2 to E51. This time it's not quartile 1, it's quartile 3. Enter. really quickly, easily found my 5-number summary. Does that make sense? So you've easily found those. From there, you can find out your range. Now, what was the range? It's the max take the minimum. So if I click on, if I do equals, click on the cell that has my maximum in it, take away the cell that has my minimum in it, press enter, it'll calculate for us. Just like with my IQR, my interquartile range equals my quartile 3, take my quartile 1 cell, and it will calculate my IQR for me. So you can see that you can get these calculations done in a really, really quick and easy way, and it's not really tedious or take you too long. Okay, just remembering that process. You then do the same thing for your senior males or your other data set and have those. We will talk about your standard deviation and the outliers at a later stage to get you done. Okay, so today you should be working on trying to get this part done where you've got your frequency table, done your histograms, and get your calculation, those main calculations done. All right.